He's a composer and sound designer, and his talk is going to be called The Tarzan Method, Iterative Design in Video Game Development. All yours.
Good morning. I've got the pleasure of being between you and coffee with the break afterwards, so I won't be too long. Yeah, thank you very much for the introduction. Thank you for coming on this morning. Here's our logo. I think it's the biggest maybe I've ever seen our logo. Easy wins. So yeah, my job role at Teaboy Games is creative director. My background is that of a composer, so I'm a music graduate, and I got into video game making and kind of digital creativity in general through wanting to make music and just looking for more avenues as a composer to make a living doing that, because it's hard when you're not in London. And I'll go into it in more detail, but I quickly realised that when we made our first game, I made the music in about a week. I was like, cool, what else can I do? What else can I learn? And it was through that I then got into learning about programming, learning about marketing, and all the other parts of the games industry that maybe weren't game development per se. And something that's been really key to that journey for me as a creative is this, and this is the Tarzan Method. So this is something I've borrowed from a YouTuber called Casey Neistat. Some of you might be familiar with him. And this is all about a methodology for working of iterative design. And it's the idea that when you begin, you have maybe a goal or an aim or an ambition in mind, and you think that it's going to be a really linear process. I'm going to start here, I'm going to get there, everything's going to be great, we'll finish early, and it will be hunky-dory. But it's rarely like that. And there's a lot that can be said for embracing those changes. So I'm sure there's a much better name for this than the Tarzan Method. But the idea is, as you moving along through your process, imagine you're Tarzan in the jungle, you reach for a vine, but instead of swinging forward, you're swinging to the side. And then you grab another one, and then you swing to that side. And it's the concept that as you're moving along, you go in different directions, and you meet different challenges, and you come across different opportunities. And sometimes they cause you to question your end goal, your end aspiration. And it's about being open-minded enough to be like, oh, this is really interesting, I really like this new direction, I'm now going to go over here because my original goal, my original aspiration is incorrect, or it's not what I want anymore. So really it's this idea of iterative design and questioning your goals and aspirations as you move along. So what I want to do is I want to put some of that into context, because that was very broad. And I'm just going to play you some examples of some of the games that we've made and how we've used this process in our game development cycles. So I'm going to start off with a video of our first ever game that we made called Fallin back in 2015. So this is the Games Hub. You might have mentioned it. I might have heard it mentioned earlier on. This is a game development studio, or like a startup hub based in the Knowledge Gateway. And here's the original cohort. There's me in the middle, full of hope, and a few others. Steve at the front in the ludicrous yellow trousers. He's the guru of the Games Hub. It's his idea. He set this up. And the idea with Games Hub was it was a place for anyone interested in the game design industry to come along and to start their own business. So I was there as a composer, I was there as an artist. Had no idea how to program, but I knew I wanted to make video games, and I was there and I took advantage of all this incredible support and these opportunities that were laid in front of me. I met Scott, who's in front of me to my left, and then also Aidan in the far corner in the purple hoodie, and we formed Teaboy Games. We picked the name Teaboy because come from my experience working in recording studios, literally being the Teaboy, being at the bottom rung of the ladder, and wanting to learn from everyone around us. That was the concept. We always wanted to be in a position where we're learning from those around us. And so we knew Games Hub was going to last for 6 months. That was how long it was originally advertised as. And we thought, right, what can we realistically do in that period of time? How are we actually going to achieve a goal in that period of time? Let's make an arcade game. Let's do it for mobile. And let's just try and do something casual. Let's keep it really simple. So these were our kind of, that's our brief that we'd set ourselves. And so we started prototyping. This was the first, so this is the prototype images of Fallin. This is what it looked like initially. We went for those kind of Mario-style tubes. This was made in Stencil, software called Stencil. And you can see it's all placeholder graphics. Thought, right, okay, let's introduce some design. Let's maybe remove outlines and things and just go for a really minimal aesthetic. Monument Valley was just starting to get popular, so we kind of thought that's a really nice influence to have. And you can see there, we realised that actually the colours are more important than the shapes. So we got rid of the shapes and we just stuck with colours for the things that fall down. You're still tapping the side of the screen to rotate that central object. And then we realised, and this took us far too long to realise, that when things fall down the screen, perhaps it's better if you do it in portrait. It took us far too long to realise that, but eventually we did. And then we got to our overall sort of final visual aesthetic. And that was very much an organic process. That was us learning the software. I was learning to use Photoshop and After Effects and other vector-based softwares. Scott and Aidan were learning Stencil and then moved into using Construct 2 at the time. So we were learning our tools, and as we were learning our tools, we had really high taste levels, but our skill levels were quite low. And as we iterated, our skill levels gradually caught up with our taste levels. There's a really good little YouTube video by Ira Glass on that, if anyone knows, interested. And that's what we ended up with. So we released Fallin in 2015, and it was an incredible process to sort of, having not known Scott and Aidan before I started, to then release a game in about 6 months, a year. And it was fantastic. It was a really amazing opportunity, and we actually ended up getting featured by Apple, which was mind-blowing. I got a tweet from a guy in Germany saying, "Congratulations on the feature." I was like, "What? What do you mean?" And then I looked up, and there we were in the Best New Games category. It was incredible. And our downloads leapt from about 20 a day to about 2,000 a day. It was amazing. We ended up about 70,000 downloads in total. So when it comes to how we were defining our success for this game, as our first ever game, we weren't focusing on making money, and as a result, the game has terrible monetization. We stuck some adverts in there, but it didn't really fit. The user flow was terrible for the advert element. We were trying to get people to you could upgrade certain elements of the game by playing lots, or you could spend some money. But it wasn't really the best integration, but we weren't really concerned about that because we were defining success as getting a lot of exposure. Because for us, we just wanted lots of people to know who we were, because we were more interested in going into games for hire. And so that's what we moved on to next. So our next project was making a game for the Roman Circus in Colchester. So for those that don't know, Colchester is home to Britain's only known chariot racing ring. So they actually used to do chariot racing in Colchester. Chariot racing is brutal. It's absolutely insane. You'd have sort of one charioteer, which about 4 horses, and I think there'd be anywhere between up to 8 of these competitors racing round the track, and then right at the turning corner, it's just carnage. And it's an incredible story, and there's a visitor centre here in Colchester that talks about some of the history. And so we worked with them to design a game for their visitor centre. So we wanted to bring some of this history off the page and put it onto an interactive platform. And they've got these fantastic big 40-inch touchscreens in the visitor centre. So we thought, great, let's make a game that will work on mobile. We can scale up really easily to work on a touchscreen in the visitor centre. So it had a lot of nice uses. This project also was in collaboration with Signals, and Signals specialise in creative digital learning. And so we were working with groups of young people to actually design the game as well. Now, when you're working with young people in that design process, you've got to consider lots of other perspectives and lots of other opinions. And so by integrating them into that design process, it had a big impact on how we would normally work. So we were keen to not push our ideas upon the young people involved. It was very much like, how can we interpret your ideas and realise them on a professional level? Because ultimately it still had to be released on the App Store and had to go on display in a visitor centre, so it does need a level of professionalism. So there's some interpretation there. But what we could also do was look at creating creative boundaries. So setting up some guidelines and say, right, be creative within these sets of rules that we're going to make, and then it was beneficial for everyone involved. So things like all the artwork that you can see has all been painted by young people on the project, and then scanned in, and sometimes just touched up a little bit in Photoshop to make the colours nice and rich. But what we did was maybe we'd done things like defined the art style, so we defined the colour scheme. So that meant we literally decided what paints were out in the workshop. And then doing extra bits like putting the border around the edge of the screen actually helps quite a lot. When things are inside a border, you're more forgiving of what's inside the frame. So even if the artwork varies a little bit, it looks more cohesive because it's framed. And we sort of found these tricks as we were moving along. So again, we were iterating, how can we lift the quality of this product whilst making sure that the young people's voices are still very much inside the game. So inside this, up in the top left, you press that button and you'll change through time. So this image here, I don't have the next image, but if you press it again, everything falls down. One of my favourite things about Colchester is that most of its history has been burnt down. So most of it's underground, so you can't actually see it. So as someone who's interested in sound, that's fantastic because it's something you can't touch. So when you switch to that next screen, you then rebuild Colchester, but with modern, so first lights in there, jumbos in there, etc. We had some oral history. We did some little bit of storytelling. We wrote some scripts about lives of people who maybe who worked at the Roman circus. So there was a slave boy, there was a charioteer, there was a noblewoman, people that maybe would have come. And we went into the studio and recorded some short stories. It was a really, really wonderful project. And to be in that project as both an educator and a video game designer was really exciting because, again, it was sort of changing our expectations of what is video game design. How do we change this process? And we got paid. Yay, we made some money. That was nice. So cool, we can keep doing this. It's a thing, it's an actual job. I'm not just playing video games all day. Great. So I'm going to move on now to our next game afterwards. And this is something, so the video game industry itself is really good at talking about failure. We like to own our failures. And this next one is a failure story. So I'm going to play a short video, a little trailer, and then talk about how we failed. So, Pendulum. Pendulum was a game that we originally made, we pitched to the Olympic Committee for the Paralympic Games in 2016. At the time, Channel 4 had just won the broadcasting rights to the Paralympic Games, and what you might not know is that Channel 4 actually has a games publishing arm. So alongside all of their own IP, they also publish a lot of video games. And they'd put some feelers out to the industry saying, is anyone interested, or has anyone got any ideas for creating a game for the Paralympics? And I thought, oh, now how incredible would that be if you could be the official game of the Paralympics? It'd be a pretty big step up from maybe what we've worked on so far. But we felt like it was within our means. And so we started working on a design, but the aesthetic we wanted to achieve, the core idea of the game was, well, we think, well, what is the mission statement of the Paralympic Games? And what's the ethos? And what we came to was that, well, the goal is still the same. You're still trying to run just as fast or throw just as far. But the limitations to the athletes are massively different. So we thought, well, how could we interpret that in a game? How could we maybe make it so that you're still trying to do the same thing all the time, but as you move through the game, there are different challenges. So during the game, you're always playing as this pendulum swinging down the screen, trying to catch one of the orbs, but sometimes you can't see the orb. There's a visual impairment. Sometimes there's a big gravity well that's pulling you one side. Your balance is off. Sometimes left and right swaps around. So we're just sort of putting these different challenges in front of you and changing the way that you're playing the game, but you're always trying to do the same thing. And we got through to the final 2 on this project. We were really, really, you can see where this is going, right? We got through to the final 2, and then all of a sudden, the Olympic Committee pulled the entire project. And it transpired that they didn't know what they want. Okay, what they'd done is they decided, Channel 4 clearly said, yeah, let's do a game. We know loads of gamers, let's do a game. And then we got our hopes up. We were novices, we got our hopes up. And unfortunately, the project got pulled. And so we'd spent maybe a couple months working on this, prototyping it, trying to make it as exciting as possible. And then it sort of got pulled out from under our feet. And it was gutting, it really was. But we thought, well, what do we do? We've kind of got half a game here. We ended up releasing it. So we thought, well, look, we've got a game. Why not just reskin it and put it out as our own IP? We hadn't signed anything, so it was still our idea. We could do with it as we wished. And so we did. We released Pendulum in June 2017, and we finished it in Construct 2, so we work in Construct 2, and it was a really nice way of saying, well, look, here's a bit of a failure, but we're going to turn it into a success story and release it anyway. Now, going back to what I said earlier on about terrible monetization strategies, this one also featured another terrible monetization strategy. So what we did with this one is we decided to go premium. We thought, okay, well, rather than trying to put adverts inside the game, because we felt like it didn't really fit the aesthetic of the game was maybe one that was easy to play, hard to master, but if we stuck adverts in there, it would probably be too frustrating. And so we said, well, let's just charge a nominal fee. At the time on the App Store, the cheapest you could charge was 99p. We thought we'd do that, or we did do that. But one thing we failed to realize is that this game would come under the casual branding. Yeah, it's a casual game, so it's a way of you wasting time. And what we subsequently realized is that people don't want to pay money to waste time. Specifically not on mobile phones, and maybe not at that time. Maybe now so, inside other bigger games. Microtransactions, yes. But it's hard enough to get someone to download an app anyway, even if it's free. As soon as you put a payment barrier in there, it becomes drastically harder. So we're really proud of the game. I'm really proud of the music, and I think it looked beautiful. It didn't quite get as many downloads as we liked, but we released it, we finished it, and that was really important for us because we didn't want to leave it unfinished, sat on a hard drive. We just want to say, cool, it's done, let's move on to the next project. And so this comes on to the last project I'll talk about today, and it's our most exciting one to date, I would say, and that is a project called Fit the Bill. So this is a project that we've been doing over the last 2 years or so with Essex Police. And we were commissioned to make a video game by Essex Police as part of one of their upcoming recruitment campaigns. They approached us asking for to create an online activity that offers a policing challenge and form part of a recruitment drive for the Essex Police. So super duper vague. As you can imagine, they didn't really have much money, but we thought, oh my God, yes. How exciting is that to make a game for good, a game for the good of the people. So we pitched a few different ideas to them, and we ended up going with a game that was really similar. It was drawn, we draw a lot of influence from a game called Reigns, which some of you might know. They've done a lot of spin-offs lately with things like Game of Thrones, where you play as someone in power, and you have to maintain that power for as long as possible by managing different metrics. So at the top there, you can see there's a shield, there's a speech bubble, there is some money, and there's some handcuffs. And these are different ways that the police measure their success. So you've got things like integrity, communication, finances, and then also crime rate. These are the metrics that you balance. And what you do in the game is you play holistically as the police force. And so your proposition with different questions, do you send a police officer here? Swipe left. Do you send a police officer here? Swipe right. And based on your decision, you balance these different metrics. And then at the end of the game, you're given a ranking, and it's, do you fit the bill or not? And it was a fascinating challenge to work with because obviously everything had to go through multiple layers of scrutiny because we're now representing the police force. So we've got to be careful with every single piece of text that we put, every image that goes into the game. That's, that is someone who works for the police force. So we have to make sure that we're not misrepresenting them. But what we found was that there was a lot of text. There was a lot of text. And when you're on a mobile screen, especially with video games, no one reads text, right? So how can we reduce this down to be as simple as possible? How can we make the police force happy by not misrepresenting them, but also how do we make a better game experience by trying to put as little text in there as possible? And so there are still a lot of questions like this. Just, here's a question, how would you deal with it? But there's also other bits. So we have some mini-games. Love mini-games. And in theory, this should, on the right, this should play. Brilliant. So what we've got here is a little mini-game where you've got to throw the stinger, try and stop the car, and then retrieve it back so you don't burst the tyres on the police car at the same time. There's a couple of other mini games. There's there's one where we're on a recruitment drive and you've got to fling through CVs. And yeah, so these are how can we, what are we really good at? We're really good at doing arcade mini games. That's our thing. How can we get some of that inside the game? Well, let's do some police-themed arcade mini games. And so this is sort of a bit of a summary of that project. So again, we were working in Construct, but this time we were working in Construct 3. And for those who don't know, Construct is a event-driven programming software. It's actually free. You can try it out online, and then you pay a bit more for your sort of professional license. But what's brilliant about it is it exports in HTML5. So as you might have saw on that last screen, it's actually it's all browser-based. So you can, any device that runs HTML5 will play this game, and it will scale accordingly. And we wanted to do that because we knew how hard it was to get people to download apps. And especially for this type of game, it's maybe not something you're going to play lots and lots of times. You're probably going to play it once or twice. It forms part of a larger marketing campaign where people are maybe seeing something on TV, seeing something, or hearing something on the radio, etc., etc. And they might see it now on their phone and go, oh, I'll give that a play, and then consider, maybe I do fit the bill, maybe I should consider a job in the police force. What they were hoping to do with this is to try and get a more diverse range of people in the police force. So they need to make sure that the police force is representative of the people that they are protecting. And so by bringing in a video game, they're thinking, well, maybe we can now target people who wouldn't see our Facebook posts or our Facebook adverts, or maybe wouldn't see some of our web banners. And so it's about reaching out to a different audience. And so we were really, we worked really hard on the images of the people who are in the game. Who do we want to represent in the game? Who do we want to show that it's the idea of people like me? So it's who are we representing? And it was a really fascinating challenge. And it is launching soon. It's been going on for a long time, but I'm really excited to launch it really soon. And so I'm just going to summarize with sort of some of the things that we've learned over our time of this game development process with iterative design. As a small team, we're really lucky. It's really easy for us to iterate because there's only 3 of us. So if we want to change something, it's can I do that? Okay, cool. It's really easy. As you get bigger, it's harder. But one of the main things that we struggle with is feature creep. And that is the idea that, oh, we could do this as well. Oh, yeah, we could also do that. In that first game I mentioned, Fallin, we actually cut the game in half about a month before release. There was this whole level select system that as you beat one level, you moved up, and et cetera, et cetera. And it was a really lovely feature, but the game was just too bloated. The file size was getting too big. And when it comes to game design, the user experience starts from the moment they hit download on the App Store. And if they've got rubbish Wi-Fi, they don't think the Wi-Fi is rubbish. They go, oh my God, this game's taking forever to download. So the smaller your file size can be, the better user experience that you're creating. So it's really important for us to keep our file sizes as small as possible. So feature creep is a massive problem for us. But I'm quite brutal with cutting things. It's like, yeah, just get rid of it. I'd rather have something that's amazing than a few things that are meh. Constantly refer and review your brief. You can always be referring back to that brief But is it still the right thing? Have you discovered something new along the way that makes more sense and that changes what that original brief might be? And again, these are things that will work in any industry and when it comes to any project. Don't be afraid of change. So along the way, if you're having to review your brief, change is good. Change can be better. Obviously, don't change for the sake of changing. No one likes it when the rug's pulled out from under your feet, but it's okay to change things along the way, especially if everyone's on the same page and you realise this is going to be better if we make this change. And then last of all, finish things. So obviously a bit different if you're working on contract projects, but when it comes to your own IP especially, and this is a bugbear of any creative, be that a musician, every musician's got an EP in the works. Oh, it will come out one day, it's there, I just need to, finish it, just release it, it's okay, move on to the next project. Again, I go back to that Ira Glass statement I said earlier on. There's a really lovely video where he talks about your taste, your skill level catching up with your taste. When you first start out, you've got really great taste, you know exactly what you love. And you think, well, a lot of people don't let their skill level catch up with their taste. They give up before they get there. But those that do persevere are the ones that finish things. And the way you do increase your skill level is you just make more things. As you make more things, you get better. So it's really important that you finish things because you learn so much in that process. So thank you very much. That's me.
Isn't he amazing? Aren't we lucky to have Frazer and Teaboy Games in Colchester? Thank you very, very much. Now, it's time to have refreshments. So you've got 15 minutes, and if you can be back here in a quarter of an hour, that'd be fantastic. Thank you.